Okay, before I say anything, I need you to picture something. Picture your favorite crime author, the one whose books you've binged, whose name you recognize immediately on a shelf. The one who writes about detectives and murders and the dark side of human nature so convincingly that you wonder how they even come up with this stuff. Now imagine finding out they didn't come up with it. Imagine finding out that everything they wrote, every calculated murder, every cold-blooded motive, every psychological unraveling, they wrote it from memory. Today's story is about a woman who spent 40 years writing about killers. And the entire time, not one of her millions of readers knew the truth. She wasn't imagining the darkness. She had lived it. To understand what happens, we need to go back. Way back. Christchurch, New Zealand. A high school called Christchurch Girls' High School, and two girls who, by every measure of logic, should never have been friends. The first girl is Pauline Parker, 16 years old, quiet, intense, observant. Her parents weren't wealthy. They worked as household staff for the local university. Pauline was sharp, but she existed on the outside of things, always watching, never quite fitting. The second girl is Juliet Hulme, 15 years old, brilliant, dramatic, theatrical, in the way that only teenagers who've read too many novels can be. Her father was the rector, essentially the head, of that very same university. She lived in a grand homestead. She had books, space, culture, access. On paper, these two had nothing in common. But here's the thing about trauma. It finds its own. Both girls had spent years of their childhood seriously ill and isolated. Pauline had suffered from a bone infection, kept in hospital, away from other kids, for months. Juliet had battled tuberculosis, sent to different countries for treatment, separated from her family. Alone. Both of them had learned what it felt like to be on the outside of normal life, pressing their faces against the glass. When they finally found each other, it wasn't just a friendship. It was like someone had finally switched the lights on. At first, the friendship looked completely normal. They wrote together. Stories, plays, entire fictional universes poured into notebooks. They shared books, ideas, secrets. But it escalated. Quickly. The girls started to reject the world around them. They invented their own religion, discarded Christianity entirely, and built their own belief system, their own saints, their own rituals. And then they built something called the Fourth World. The Fourth World was their version of heaven, a parallel dimension that existed somewhere beyond ordinary reality, a place that only people of extraordinary spiritual and intellectual height could enter, a place where the rules of regular life simply didn't apply. And according to Pauline's diary, which would later be read aloud in a courtroom, she and Juliet genuinely believed they had already entered it, that their bond was so profound, so far beyond what ordinary people experienced, that they existed on a different level of existence. A different level. Different rules. I need you to hold that thought. Because that idea, that they were above normal morality, is what makes everything that comes next possible. Their families were terrified. In 1950s New Zealand, the intensity of the girls' bond raised immediate red flags. Both sets of parents tried to limit contact. It didn't work. In 1954, the carefully constructed world they had built together started to crack. Juliet's father was forced to resign. Her mother was discovered to be having an affair. The marriage collapsed, and the family made a decision. Juliet would be sent to live with relatives in South Africa, indefinitely. For most teenagers, a best friend moving away is devastating, painful, something you cry about, write letters about, eventually move past. For Pauline and Juliet, it was the end of the universe. So they came up with a plan. Pauline would go with Juliet to South Africa. From there, they'd travel to Hollywood or New York. They'd become famous writers. They'd live the life they'd been planning in their notebooks for years. Together. There was one problem. Pauline's mother, Honora Reaper, would never allow it. In Pauline's mind, twisted by years of codependency and shared fantasy, her mother wasn't just being cautious. She was the obstacle. The only thing standing between them and their perfect life. And in the fourth world, obstacles have solutions. June 22nd, 1954. A Tuesday. The girls invited Honora for afternoon tea at a kiosk in Victoria Park, Christchurch. A lovely, ordinary outing. A mother spending the afternoon with her daughter and her daughter's best friend. Tea, sunshine, a walk through the trees. Honora said yes. Of course she did. Hidden in Pauline's bag was half a brick, wrapped inside an old stocking. After tea, the three of them walked together down a wooded path in the park. 130 meters from the kiosk, the girls attacked. It was frenzy, desperate, the kind of violence that only comes from people who are terrified. Terrified it won't work, terrified of what it means, terrified of stopping. The coroner's report later described major lacerations across Honora's head, neck, and face. She had defensive injuries on her hands. She had fought back. When it was over, the girls ran back to the tea kiosk. They were covered in blood. They told the owners that Honora had slipped on the path, hit her head. They needed help. But no one slips and looks like that. The trial was a national sensation. Pauline's diary was read aloud in court. Page after page of her own handwriting, describing the planning, the fantasy world, the motive. It was chilling, not because it was cold and calculated, but because it was the opposite. It was emotional, delusional, convinced. On August 28, 1954, both Pauline Parker and Juliet Hulme were convicted of murder. Because they were minors, they couldn't be sentenced to death. They were each detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, which in practice meant 5 years in prison. When they were released, there was one condition attached. They were never to see or contact each other again. The fourth world was over. Pauline Parker disappeared. Changed her name. Moved to England. Found a small village in Kent, opened a horse riding school for children, and became a devout Roman Catholic. According to her sister, she spent 4 decades isolating herself from the world as her own form of atonement. 40 years of choosing smallness, choosing quiet, choosing to repay something that can never really be repaid. Juliet Hulme took a very different path. She left New Zealand, moved around, eventually settled in Scotland, changed her name, and she started writing. Not journals, not therapy, novels, historical fiction, detective stories set in Victorian England, richly detailed, psychologically complex, morally layered stories about crime and justice and the dark corners of human nature. Her books were published, then they sold a lot. Then she became a best-selling author with a devoted international readership and over 60 novels to her name. For 40 years, she was beloved. For 40 years, nobody knew. Her name was Anne Perry. Anne Perry, the crime writer, the bestseller, the woman whose books sit on shelves in living rooms and airport lounges and charity shops all over the world. She was Juliet Hulme, the teenage girl who helped murder a woman in a park in 1954. Her real identity was only uncovered in 1994, when Peter Jackson, yes, that Peter Jackson, released a film called Heavenly Creatures, dramatizing the Parker-Hulme case. Journalists made the connection. When confronted, Anne Perry confirmed it. She continued writing until her final years. Anne Perry died on April 10, 2023, at the age of 84. And somewhere, in a secondhand bookshop, or on a shelf in your parents' house, or in a box someone donated to a charity, there might be a copy of one of her novels. A crime story. Written by a woman who knew, better than almost anyone alive, exactly what it felt like to commit one. Here's the question I can't shake. Pauline Parker chose to disappear, to shrink her entire life down to penance. Juliet Hulme chose to build something real and lasting, and genuinely loved by millions of people. Which of those is redemption? Can a person genuinely become someone new? Or do we carry what we've done in us, always, no matter what name we use? I genuinely don't know the answer to that. And I think that's the most unsettling thing about this story. Not the crime, not the twist, but the question it leaves you with. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and this is exactly the kind of story I want to hear your take on. If this story got under your skin, and honestly, it should have, subscribe. Because I have more stories just like this one. Stories about people who are not what they seem. Stories that will make you look at the world a little differently. I'll see you in the next one.